August 20th, 1944. The Falaise Pocket, Normandy. The air itself is a predator. It smells of cordite, diesel, and something sickeningly sweet that clings to the back of the throat. For 3 days, Nachernhelferin Annelies Schmidt has lived in a world compressed to the shuddering steel walls of an SD KFC 251 half-track. The radio she operates crackles not with orders, but with the static of a dying army. Outside, the symphony of the damned plays on an endless loop. The high-pitched shriek of incoming artillery, the guttural cough of a Panzer 75mm cannon, and the incessant, chattering rage of machine guns. They are surrounded. The pocket is collapsing. Annelies adjusts her headset, the leather slick with sweat. Her fingers, trained to tap out precise Morse code, tremble slightly. She is 21 years old, a signals auxiliary for the 2nd Panzer Division, and she has not seen the sky in 72 hours. Her world is the green glow of the radio's display and the strained face of her commander, Hauptmann Richter, whose crisp uniform is now a stained, torn rag. He barks a command, but it's swallowed by a deafening roar as a shell impacts nearby. The half-track lurches violently, throwing Annelies against the humming transmitter. The lights flicker and die. Silence, sudden and terrifying, fills the metal coffin. Then, a new sound, the crunch of boots on gravel, getting closer. Not the rhythmic stomp of German jackboots, but a looser, more hurried tread. Voices, sharp and alien, cut through the ringing in her ears. American English. Richter draws his Luger, his knuckles white. "It is over," he whispers, not to her, but to the ghosts in the dark. The rear doors of the half-track are wrenched open, flooding the space with blinding, hazy sunlight. Silhouetted against the glare are figures in unfamiliar helmets, cradling M1 Garand rifles. A voice, loud and raw, yells, "Out! Hands up! Raus! Schnell!" Annelies scrambles out, her eyes struggling to adjust. The scene is apocalyptic. The narrow country lane is a scrapyard of twisted metal and burning vehicles. The air shimmers with heat. All around them, German soldiers are emerging from ditches and wrecked armor, their hands raised in surrender. Their faces are hollow masks of soot and exhaustion. She feels a profound sense of dislocation, as if stepping from one reality into another. The Americans are so loud. They move with a casual, almost sloppy confidence that seems at odds with the gravity of the moment. One of them, a young GI with freckles and weary eyes, gestures with his rifle. "This way, Fräulein. Keep moving." She joins a growing column of prisoners, a river of field gray uniforms flowing through the devastation. She spots other women, nurses from the Deutsches Rotes Kreuz, their white aprons sullied with blood and mud, clerks from administrative units, clutching their purses as if their lives depended on it. There is no order, no familiar discipline. Officers are shoved into line next to privates. A shared, silent shame hangs over them all. They march for hours, past smoldering Tiger tanks and abandoned field guns. Allied trucks, laden with supplies and fresh-faced soldiers, rumble past in the opposite direction. The men sometimes staring, sometimes shouting things she doesn't understand. By dusk, they arrive at a makeshift collection point in an open field, ringed with barbed wire and armed guards. Here, the process begins. They are searched, their personal effects, letters, photographs, a small silver locket in Annelies's case, are confiscated and tossed into a crate. The procedure is impersonal, efficient, and utterly humiliating. She is just a number now, another piece of human debris to be cataloged and contained. An American officer with a clipboard approaches her. He looks at her uniform, at the lightning bolt insignia of the Signals Corps on her sleeve. "You speak English?" he asks, his accent flat and strange. Annelies hesitates, then gives a clipped nod. "A little, from school." The officer makes a note. "Good, you'll be processed with the others. Then you're going to England." England! The word lands like a stone. The enemy's homeland. An island fortress they were told was starving, crippled, on the brink of collapse. The thought sends a cold dread through her, a fear deeper than she felt in the half-track. As night falls, a cold rain begins to slick the Normandy mud. Anneliese huddles with two other women, a nurse named Clara and an older Luftwaffe typist named Helga. They share a single blanket, the wool coarse and damp against their skin. Through the wire, they can see the flashes of distant artillery, the war moving on without them. Anneliese looks at the faces around her, stripped of rank and purpose, and realizes that everything she has ever been taught about duty, about victory, about the invincibility of the Reich has dissolved into this muddy field in France. A new, terrifying chapter has begun, and its first words are spoken in a language she barely comprehends. The crossing is a nauseating blur. Anneliese and 100 other women are herded into the dark, cavernous hold of a transport ship. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, sea salt, and vomit. For 2 days, they are tossed by the gray, unforgiving waters of the English Channel. There are no windows, only the constant groaning of the ship's hull and the rhythmic slap of waves against steel. Time loses its meaning. They are given hardtack biscuits and tins of salty beef, food that feels as alien in their mouths as the language of their captors. The women speak in low, hushed tones. Rumors spread like a contagion. They are being sent to America, to Canada, to labor camps in Scotland. Helga, the Luftwaffe typist, insists they will be used as bargaining chips. Clara, the nurse, says nothing, her face a stoic, unreadable mask. Anneliese clings to a desperate, fragile hope. Perhaps the war will end soon. Perhaps this is all just a temporary nightmare. They dock at Southampton under a sky the color of wet slate. The sheer scale of the port is staggering. An endless forest of cranes, ships of every size, and mountains of supplies. The activity is frantic, yet orderly. There is no sign of the crippled, bombed-out nation described by Dr. Goebbels' propaganda. This is the engine room of a vast, global war machine, and it is running at full power. The sight is profoundly demoralizing. They are marched off the ship and onto a waiting train, the carriage windows barred. The British soldiers who escort them are different from the Americans. They are older, more reserved. Their battle dress is a different shade of brown, their movements more formal. They don't shout. They give quiet, firm commands that are somehow more intimidating than the Americans' boisterous orders. The train rattles through a countryside that is shockingly, impossibly green. Rolling hills, neat hedgerows, stone cottages with smoke curling from their chimneys. It is a storybook landscape, a pastoral paradise that seems utterly disconnected from the war. It is also, Anneliese realizes with a growing sense of dread, a prison. Every mile deeper into this placid landscape is another mile away from home, from everything she has ever known. After several hours, the train slows and pulls into a small rural station. The sign reads, Hexton. They are ordered out and loaded into the back of canvas-topped lorries. The camp appears over the rise of a hill, a sprawling city of Nissen huts, stark and utilitarian, surrounded by a double fence of barbed wire and punctuated by tall wooden watchtowers. It is designated POW Camp 27, an all-female compound in the heart of the English Midlands. As they are marched through the main gate, Anneliese feels the eyes of the guards on them. They are women, members of the British Auxiliary Territorial Service, the ATS. Their uniforms are smart, their posture impeccable. The camp commandant, a stern-faced major named Helen Shaw, addresses them through a translator. Her tone is crisp, professional, devoid of emotion. They will be treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention. They will work. They will follow the rules. Any breach of discipline will be punished. Anneliese is assigned to Hut 14 with 11 other women. The hut is a long, curved tube of corrugated iron. Inside, it smells of damp wood, disinfectant, and coal smoke from the single pot-bellied stove in the center. 12 metal cots, each with a thin mattress and 2 coarse gray blankets, line the walls. It is stark, but it is clean. There is a sense of order here that is both reassuring and unsettling. A schedule is posted on a board near the door, a rigid timetable that will now govern their existence. 0600, reveille. 0630, roll call. 0700, breakfast. 0800, work detail. The day is broken down into precise, unyielding blocks of time. In the first few days, a strange routine begins to form. The work is monotonous, mending uniforms in a vast sewing room, tending vegetables in the camp garden, peeling mountains of potatoes in the kitchens. The food is bland and repetitive: boiled potatoes, boiled cabbage, thin stew, and bread that is dense and dark. But it is the moments between the scheduled activities that are the most disorienting. It is the small, seemingly insignificant details of camp life that create a growing sense of cultural vertigo. The way the British Guards speak to each other, with an easygoing familiarity that crosses ranks. The presence of Polish and Czech soldiers guarding the outer perimeter, men who should be their allies, now serving their captors. Anneliese and the other German women instinctively maintain their own rigid hierarchy. Officers are still addressed by their titles. Discipline, even without uniforms or weapons, is paramount. They march to roll call in neat formations, a small act of defiance, a way of clinging to the order they understand. The British Guards watch this display with a mixture of amusement and curiosity, as if observing the peculiar rituals of a newly discovered tribe. But there is one ritual, one daily occurrence, that none of them can begin to comprehend. It happens every afternoon, precisely at 4 o'clock, and it makes no sense. The first time it happens, it causes a wave of confusion and suspicion through Hut 14. At 15:45, the guards overseeing the sewing room simply put down their paperwork. A corporal from the ATS, a young woman named Davies with red hair and a spray of freckles, announces, "Right then, ladies, tools down." The German women look at each other, bewildered. 15 minutes of their assigned work detail remain. Stopping early is a breach of protocol. Is it a test? Some kind of trick to gauge their discipline? They remain at their sewing machines, hands folded, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then the trolley appears, a rickety wooden cart pushed by two of the camp's trustees, laden with a large steaming metal urn, a stack of thick ceramic mugs, a jug of milk, and a bowl of sugar cubes. The smell that precedes it is foreign, aromatic, slightly bitter, earthy. The guards line up, chatting casually as mugs are filled with the dark, steaming liquid. Corporal Davies even laughs at something a private says, a genuine, unrestrained sound that feels completely out of place in a prisoner of war camp. She takes a mug, adds a splash of milk and 2 sugar cubes, and stirs it with a small spoon. She takes a long, slow sip, her shoulders visibly relaxing. The entire work detail has come to a complete halt for this. Anneliese watches, fascinated and appalled. In Germany, under the iron fist of the Third Reich and the pressures of total war, such a thing is unthinkable. A break is a calculated period of rest to ensure maximum efficiency for the next block of work. It is not a social gathering. It is not a moment for casual pleasure. This ritual, for it is clearly a ritual, is something else entirely. It is unhurried, it is communal, it seems to serve no practical purpose whatsoever. Helga, the former Luftwaffe typist, scoffs under her breath. "Decadence," she mutters to Anneliese. "Look at them. The country is at war, and they stop everything for a cup of hot water and leaves. This is why they will lose." But day after day, the ritual repeats itself, not just in the sewing room, but across the entire camp. At 4 o'clock, the women tending the gardens put down their spades. The prisoners peeling potatoes in the kitchen are given a 10-minute reprieve. Even the guards in the watchtowers are relieved by a roving sentry so they can have their turn. The entire machinery of Camp 27 pauses for tea, as they call it. The German women discuss it endlessly in the evenings, huddled around the stove in their Nissen hut. Their theories are wild, colored by years of propaganda and a deep-seated mistrust of their captors. It is a mild poison, insists one woman, a former radio operator from Hamburg. To keep us docile, they put something in it to make us weak. Clara, the pragmatic nurse, dismisses this immediately. Nonsense. If they wanted to poison us, they would do it far more efficiently. And why would their own guards drink it? Another woman, who had worked for the administration in Paris, offers a different explanation. It is a signal, a code. The number of sugar cubes, the way they hold the cup, they are communicating right in front of us. This theory gains some traction. The women begin to watch the guards with renewed intensity during the tea break, trying to decipher hidden meanings in their every gesture. But the gestures are always the same: casual, relaxed, utterly mundane. Annalise finds herself wrestling with a more unsettling possibility. What if it is not a trick? What if it is exactly what it appears to be? A simple, ingrained cultural habit. The idea is almost more disturbing than the thought of poison or secret codes. It suggests a mindset so fundamentally different from her own that it feels alien. Her entire life has been shaped by the ideals of sacrifice, discipline, and the subordination of the individual to the state. Every action had a purpose. Every moment was dedicated to the cause of the Reich. This daily, system-wide pause for something as trivial as a beverage seems like a profound weakness, a catastrophic failure of national will. How could a nation that stops for tea possibly win a war against an ideology that never rests? One afternoon, Corporal Davies, making her rounds, notices Annalise staring at the tea trolley. Perhaps mistaking her intense scrutiny for longing, the corporal smiles. "Fancy a cuppa, Schmidt?" she asks, her English informal and quick. Annalise is taken aback. The offer of fraternization is a shocking breach of the expected prisoner-guard dynamic. She stiffens, her posture becoming ramrod straight. "Nein, danke," she replies, her voice colder than she intended. The corporal just shrugs, her good humor undimmed. "Suit yourself, then. More for us, then." She walks away, humming a popular tune. Annalise watches her go, a knot of confusion tightening in her stomach. The corporal's casual kindness is more disorienting than any cruelty. It doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't make sense. The simple, steaming mug of tea has become a symbol of a world she cannot fathom. A daily riddle that offers no answers, only more questions. The 4 o'clock ritual becomes a silent battleground, a daily flashpoint for the simmering cultural conflict within the wire of Camp 27. The German women, led by the more ardent believers in the National Socialist ideology like Helga, decide to make a stand. They see the tea break as the most visible manifestation of the enemy's perceived softness, their lack of martial seriousness. To accept it, or even to appear to condone it, would be a betrayal. So they develop their own counter-ritual. Every day at 15:55, 5 minutes before the tea trolley is due to arrive, they deliberately increase their work pace. The whirring of the sewing machines becomes a frantic hum. The potato peelers attack the vegetables with a renewed, almost violent vigor. They will show their captors what true discipline looks like. They will demonstrate the superiority of German industriousness. The British Guards are, for the most part, completely oblivious to this silent protest. They see only a group of prisoners working diligently, which they take as a positive sign of compliance. Corporal Davies once remarked to a fellow ATS member, "The Jerrys always seem to get a second wind just before tea. Odd, isn't it?" The comment, overheard by one of the German women who understood English, was repeated in Hut 14 that evening, causing a fresh wave of indignation. They weren't just being ignored, their protest was being fundamentally misunderstood, interpreted as a quirk rather than a statement of ideological defiance. This failure to communicate, to even register on the same emotional or cultural wavelength, is more frustrating than open hostility. Annalise finds herself caught in the middle. Her logical mind, trained in the precise world of signals and codes, is at war with her ingrained conditioning. She participates in the work speed-up, but her heart isn't in it. She observes the tea ritual, not with Helga's contempt, but with a detached, analytical curiosity. She notices things. She sees how the rigid separation of rank among the British Guards seems to dissolve for those 10 minutes. Major Shaw, the formidable camp commandant, will sometimes take her tea with the junior officers, and their conversation seems relaxed, almost collegial. Annalise has never seen a German officer of equivalent rank behave with such informality. To her, a commander's authority is built on distance and an unbreachable wall of formality. Yet Major Shaw's authority is undisputed. How is this possible? The friction comes to a head one dreary October afternoon. The rain is lashing against the corrugated iron roof of the sewing workshop, a relentless drumming noise that frays everyone's nerves. A new prisoner has arrived, a young woman named Lotta, barely 18, captured near Aachen. She had been an auxiliary with an anti-aircraft battery, and the trauma of the front line is still raw in her eyes. She is quiet, jumpy, and clearly terrified. When the tea trolley arrives, Corporal Davies, taking pity on the new girl, approaches her. "Here you are, love," she says gently, holding out a steaming mug. "This'll warm you up." Before Lotta can react, Helga is on her feet. "9," she barks, her voice sharp enough to cut through the noise of the rain. "We do not accept gifts from the enemy." Lotta flinches, shrinking back in her chair. Corporal Davies freezes, the friendly smile wiped from her face. The casual atmosphere evaporates. The workshop falls silent, save for the drumming of the rain. The corporal's eyes narrow. She is no longer a cheerful young woman with freckles. She is a representative of the British Army, her authority challenged in front of 20 dozen prisoners. "This is not a gift, prisoner," Corporal Davies says, her voice low and even. "And you," she adds, turning her gaze on Helga, "will learn to control your tongue. Sit down." Helga remains standing, her chin lifted in defiance. "We will not be corrupted by your decadent customs." For a moment, the two women are locked in a silent standoff. The German typist, fueled by years of indoctrination, and the British corporal, backed by the unyielding power of the victor. You could feel the tension arc between them, a clash of two worlds played out over a simple cup of tea. Annalise holds her breath. This is the moment, the confrontation they had all been building towards. Corporal Davies doesn't shout. She doesn't call for the guards. She simply places the mug on the table in front of the terrified Lotta, her movements deliberate. "My patience is not infinite, prisoner," she says to Helga, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Sit down, now." There is a core of steel in her tone that Helga had not anticipated. After a long, tense moment, the older woman slowly, resentfully, lowers herself back onto her stool. The crisis is averted, but the atmosphere is poisoned. The casual, incomprehensible ritual has been exposed for what it truly is. It is a British custom, imposed on British terms, in a British camp. It is a daily reminder, more potent than any barbed wire fence, of exactly who is in charge. That evening, in the hut, no one speaks of it. The silence is heavier and more oppressive than any argument. The cracks in their certainty are beginning to show. Winter settles over Camp 27, draping the Midlands in a shroud of fog and damp cold. The war grinds on, but the news that trickles into the camp, gleaned from fragments of conversation and discarded English newspapers, is uniformly grim. The Ardennes offensive, a last desperate gamble, has failed. The Rhine has been crossed. The Reich, the 1,000-year empire they were promised, is crumbling. The ideological certainty that had sustained women like Helga begins to erode, replaced by a brittle, defensive silence. The daily act of defiance during the 4 o'clock tea break feels less like a protest and more like a hollow, pathetic gesture. For Annalise, the ritual has transformed yet again. It is no longer a source of suspicion or a symbol of enemy decadence. It has become an anchor in a sea of chaos. The world outside the wire is falling apart, but inside, every day at 1600 hours, the trolley will appear. The smell of tea will fill the air. The guards will stand and chat for 10 minutes. The predictability of it is strangely comforting, a small island of order in the wreckage of her life. She starts to observe it not as a German prisoner, but simply as an observer of human behavior. She notes the small kindnesses, a guard saving an extra sugar cube for a friend, the shared laughter over a private joke. These are not the monstrous caricatures from the propaganda posters. They are just people, performing a ritual that connects them to a home and a life beyond the war. One afternoon, in the bleak cold of late March 1945, Annalise is on kitchen duty. Her hands are raw from scrubbing pots in cold water. Corporal Davies enters the kitchen, shaking rain from her coat. She heads straight for the urn. She sees Anneliese watching her and hesitates for a moment, remembering the confrontation with Helga. Then she seems to make a decision. She pours 2 mugs of tea instead of 1. She walks over to Anneliese, holding one out. She doesn't speak, just offers the mug. It is not a command, not an act of pity. It is a simple, human gesture. Anneliese looks from the corporal's face to the steam rising from the mug. In this moment, her entire worldview is balanced on a knife's edge. To accept is to break with her comrades, to concede something she cannot even name. To refuse is to cling to a cause that is already lost, to an identity that feels increasingly hollow. She thinks of the freezing half-track in Normandy, of the relentless propaganda, of the absolute certainty with which she had once viewed the world. All of it seems like a dream from another lifetime. Slowly, her chapped fingers close around the warm ceramic. Danke, she says, the word feeling strange on her tongue. Corporal Davies just nods, a small, tired smile on her face. They stand there for a moment in silence, 2 women on opposite sides of a world war, sharing a moment of warmth in a cold, damp kitchen. The tea is strong, bitter, and very sweet. It tastes like nothing Anneliese has ever had before. It tastes of surrender, but also of something else, something she cannot yet define. Weeks later, the war in Europe ends. The news is delivered without ceremony by Major Shaw during morning roll call. There is no celebration among the German women, only a profound, crushing silence. Their world has officially ended. In the following days, the atmosphere in the camp changes. The rigid discipline of the guards softens. The future, once a terrifying void, is now a subject of constant, anxious speculation. Will they be sent home? When? What home is there to return to? On what she believes is her final afternoon at Camp 27, Anneliese stands by the window of her hut, watching the guards gather for their tea. The ritual is unchanged. The familiar trolley, the steaming urn, the casual chatter. She can see Corporal Davies laughing with a friend. She understands it now. The tea break was never about weakness or decadence. It was about civilization. It was about holding on to the small, mundane, human routines that keep society from collapsing under the weight of barbarism. It was a symbol of a culture that believed life was more than just work and war and obedience to the state. It was a culture that believed in stopping, even in the middle of a global conflict, for 10 minutes of quiet fellowship and a warm cup of tea. That, she realizes, with a clarity that is both liberating and terrifying, is the thing she could never have understood before. It was the mystery she was never meant to solve, because her entire upbringing was designed to prevent her from even asking the right questions. The lorry that will begin her long journey home is waiting outside the gate, but Anneliese knows one part of her will forever remain in this English camp, haunted by the simple, incomprehensible ritual that revealed the true chasm between her world and theirs.